Do you know what's crazy? I've seen bottles of compost tea selling for $30 a gallon. $30! And the marketing promises they're wild. Explosive plant growth, disease resistance, practically liquid gold for your garden. But here's the thing, and I've been using compost tea in my garden for years, and I've seen real benefits, especially with keeping pests under control and my plants looking vigorous. But I've also wasted money on stuff that just didn't work. So today we're cutting through the hype to find out what compost tea can actually do for your garden, why some products are just complete snake oil, and how to use it the right way to get real results. I'm Sunny with Sunnyside Soil, and if you want to know the truth about compost tea from someone who actually uses it, you're in the right place. So let's dig in. So first things first, what even is compost tea? Well, at its most basic, compost tea is exactly what it sounds like. You take finished compost, you steep it in water like you're making a giant cup of tea, and you end up with a liquid that's loaded with beneficial microorganisms and nutrients from that compost. Now, there are two main types that you'll hear about. Non-aerated compost tea, otherwise known as extract, is the simple version. You throw compost in a mesh bag and a bucket of water, you massage out the microbes, and you've got your extract. Pretty straightforward. Actively aerated compost tea is where things get a little bit more involved. You're using an air pump, like you'd use in a fish tank, to constantly bubble oxygen through the mixture while it brews, usually for 24 to 48 hours. You're creating the perfect environment for beneficial aerobic bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and beneficial nematodes to multiply like crazy. Here's what's happening. You start with quality compost that's already teeming with beneficial microbes. You give them some food sources like fish hydrolysate or kelp. You pump in oxygen and they reproduce exponentially. In 24 hours, you can go from millions of microorganisms to billions per teaspoon. Then you spray or drench this microbial-rich liquid onto your plants or soil, and you're inoculating your garden with this incredible diversity of beneficial life. And I can tell you from experience, when you do it right, it works. Let me read you some of the claims that I've seen from compost tea companies and brewing guides. That it suppresses foliar diseases by 90%. It increases nutrient availability up to 1200%. Replaces the need for chemical fertilizers completely. Outcompetes and eliminates harmful pathogens. Increases crop yields by 50% or more. Okay, some of these are definitely overselling it. But here's the thing. There's actually truth underneath that hype. The problem is when companies make it sound like you just need to spray some tea and everything's perfect. It doesn't work that way. But what I've seen in my own garden and what the research backs up is that compost tea, when done right, absolutely does provide real benefits. Let me break down what actually works. Here's what we know from peer-reviewed research and real-world experience. Some studies have shown that compost tea helps suppress certain plant diseases. A study published in the Biological Control Journal found that compost tea showed effectiveness against powdery mildew on certain crops. Dr. Elaine Ingham, probably the most well-known compost tea researcher, has documented solid cases where properly brewed tea reduced fungal diseases on plant leaves. But here's where my personal experience comes in. I've seen the biggest benefits with pest prevention. When I spray my plants regularly with quality compost tea, I notice fewer aphids, fewer spider mites, and just less pressure overall. Why? Because healthy plants with thriving microbial communities on their leaf surfaces are more resistant. These beneficial microbes outcompete the bad guys for space and resources. They also produce compounds that pests don't like. Now the key word here is properly brewed. Dr. Linda Chalker-Scott at Washington State University reviewed dozens of studies and found inconsistent results. But when you actually dig into those studies, the ones that failed often used poor quality compost or didn't maintain aerobic conditions. So quality matters tremendously. This is where compost tea absolutely shines, and it's backed up by solid research. When brewed correctly, actively aerated compost tea contains billions of beneficial microorganisms per teaspoon. Dr. Elaine Ingram's research at the Soil Food Web Institute has documented bacterial counts of 150 to 300 micrograms per milliliter and fungal counts of 2 to 10 micrograms per milliliter in good aerated tea. These aren't just random microbes. We're talking about beneficial bacteria that fix nitrogen, fungi that help plants access phosphorus, protozoa that cycle nutrients, and beneficial nematodes that keep pest populations in check. A study in applied soil ecology found that compost tea applications increased microbial diversity in the soil and on plant surfaces. Now, this is legitimately valuable. You're building a living protective layer around your plants and feeding the soil food web. And look, I see this in my own garden. Plants that get regular tea applications, they just look healthier. They're deeper green, they're more vigorous growth, and they have better resistance to stress. Okay, now let's just take a minute here because this is where we need to be realistic. Yes, compost tea contains nutrients. It has to because compost has nutrients. Analysis from the Compost Science and Utilization Journal shows nitrogen levels around 20 to 50 parts per million in most teas, plus phosphorus, potassium, and trace minerals. So can I just stop adding compost to my garden? Well, no, but it is a gentle, readily available nutrient source that plants can use immediately, especially as a foliar spray. Think of it as a vitamin boost and not a meal replacement. The real value is that those microbes in the tea help unlock nutrients that are already in your soil, but tied up in forms that plants can't access. That is the long-term game. Now, here's where I need to get real with you about something. Those bottles of compost tea that you see online or at garden centers, I hate to tell you, but most of them are absolutely worthless. Here's why. The beneficial microorganisms that make compost tea valuable, well, they're living things. They need oxygen, they need food, and they have a shelf life. Once you bottle compost tea and it sits on a shelf for weeks or months, well, those microbes just die. You're basically buying expensive brown water. Think about it. You can't keep beneficial bacteria and fungi alive in a sealed bottle without food or oxygen for extended periods. It's just biologically impossible. Now, some companies will try to get around this by bottling dormant spores or by using preservatives, but then you're not getting the same diverse, active microbial population that makes fresh tea so effective. This is why I brew my own. And full disclosure here, I do sell it to my local customers, but I tell them to use it within a couple of days. The bottled stuff that you see online that sits in a warehouse, just save your money, seriously. Okay, here's my honest take after years of using compost tea. Yes, compost tea is worth it if you do it right. So let me be clear, it's not going to replace good soil building or smart gardening management, but as a part of a holistic approach, it's a powerful tool that I wouldn't want to garden without. Here's when compost tea makes the most sense. You've got high quality compost to start with. This is absolutely critical. Your tea is only as good as your compost. If you're using quality worm castings or well-made compost, you're starting with a great microbial diversity. Garbage in, garbage out. This saying has never been more true. You're dealing with pests or disease pressure. Now, I've seen compost tea make a real difference here, especially with soft-bodied pests like aphids and fungal issues. It's not 100%, but it's a significant improvement. Another good reason to use compost tea is if you want to build soil biology up quickly. So if you're working with depleted soil, new beds, or you're trying to transition to organic growing, compost tea can jumpstart that microbial life much faster than waiting for regular compost applications to build it up. Or if you're using it as a foliar feeding, spraying compost tea on leaves gets those beneficial microbes right where they can protect your plants and provide that nutrient boost directly through the leaves. The non-negotiables for success: you gotta brew it fresh. You gotta use it within 4 hours of finishing your brew for maximum benefit, but it can sit for a couple of days. Keep it aerated. If your air pump stops or you lose oxygen, you can breed harmful bacteria. Don't risk it. Start with quality inputs. Quality compost or worm castings are essential. And be consistent. I spray like every 2 to 3 weeks during the growing season. Sporadic applications won't give you the same results. Look, I'm a believer in compost tea because I've seen it work. My plants are healthier, my pest problems are minimal, and I've reduced my reliance on other inputs, even organic ones. But you have to understand what it is and what it isn't. It's a microbial inoculant that supports plant health as part of the bigger system. The best thing that you can do is build great soil with quality compost. But compost tea lets you spread that biological benefit around quickly and effectively. So don't waste money on bottled products that claim to be compost tea. Those microbes are dead. Either brew it yourself or ask your provider if it's been brewed within the last 48 hours. And remember, your tea is only as good as your compost. Invest in quality inputs, maintain aerobic conditions, and use it fresh. Do those things and you'll see great results. So there you have it. Compost tea is legit, but the marketing often oversells it, and most commercial products are useless. Brew it fresh, use quality compost, and you'll have a powerful tool for building healthier, more resilient plants. But I want to know, what has been your experience with compost tea? Are you brewing your own? Drop a comment, because I'd love to hear what's working for you. And if this has helped, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-world gardening advice. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep growing.